Chauffeurs who drive around rich people. What are some of the weird, shocking conversations you have overheard? Not a chauffeur, but this happened because of a lack of one. Basically, a guy the first used to know back when we were teenagers, 17 years old, had a lot of money. We just never knew how much until I was invited to go on holiday with him and some other friends. All expenses paid, of course. Anyway, we took a taxi to an area where this guy wanted to buy an apartment and wanted to show us, so we went with him and ended up spending the whole day walking around the area. We got tired and eventually wanted to go back to the house, but we were so far away that walking was not an option unless we wanted to walk for about 3 hours. Neither of us had enough cash to pay for a taxi. And back then taxis didn't accept cards. This was around 2000 or 2001 BBX. So this guy rings his dad and asks if he could send a chauffeur to pick us up. But the chauffeur turns out was busy doing some deliveries for the dad. So instead the dad says, "There's a Mercedes-Benz dealer shop near where you are. I know the manager there as I've bought several cars from them. Just go there and buy a car with the credit card. You can leave it in the house and we'll figure out how to bring it home later." So we went to this dealer shop, and somehow in about 30 minutes the manager did all the paperwork and we ended up driving back to the house in a brand new Mercedes C-Class, which we used for the rest of the holiday. Billy Bob Thornton was doing radio press for a movie about to come out, meaning he had to stop by 6 to 7 radio stations for interviews. He wanted to have a cigarette in the vehicle on the way to the next interview, but I had to let him know our company has a no smoking policy in our vehicles. He asked me to call the owner to make an exception, but the owner said no, and it's a $250 cleaning fee if he smoked in the vehicle. He asked to stop by a bank, came out and handed me $5,000 cash and said, "Here's for the whole goddamn pack." He smoked in the car the rest of the trip. Later I got up the nerve to ask him if that's the most expensive pack of cigarettes he's ever smoked. All he said was, "Not even close." Never explained it further. I think about him often. Picked up a wedding party. Bride, bridesmaid, and bride's boyfriend who was paying for the wedding. They had a magnum of champagne and we drove around for quite some time while they snorted cocaine in the back. They were using rolled up $50s and $20s, then tossing them to me in the front seat as tip money. I dutifully brushed off each bill and added them to my wallet, pretending not to know what was going on. The couple argued off and on about showing up to the wedding. Apparently she felt weird about getting married and he was trying to convince her it was a good idea. Finally dropped them off at the church and he slipped me a matchbook with his name and number written on it. Yeah, it was the late 80s and I was a young woman, one of the only female limo drivers at the time in that city. Scored a sweet leather jacket with the tips from that night. So many weird stories. Edit. Boyfriend and groom were not the same person. When we were in high school, my friend used to caddy at a local country club. One guy really liked her and asked if he would be willing to drive him around while he went out partying. This was like 2003 and in a pretty rural area. My friend agreed. He picked the guy up at like 8 p.m. Right off the bat, the guy handed him $200. He went to a bar for a little bit. My friend sat in the car. The guy came out, handed him another $200 and told him he had to visit his friend real quick. He went and got a bunch of coke. They went to another bar. He handed my friend another $100 and told him to look out the window and turn up the radio. He then blew several lines. He came out 3 hours later with a girl. He was married with kids. He handed my friend another $200 and they went back to her house. After they fucked, he came out and asked to be taken to the beach. At this point it was like 2 to 3 a.m. My friend said that the guy slowly walked around the beach, went into the water, up to his ankles, in his shoes, threw a bunch of rocks into the water and then sat in the sand for about 45 minutes. He came back to the car and asked to be driven home. When they got out of the car, he hugged my friend and gave him $500 and asked him to never tell anyone what happened. None of us really believed my friend when this happened until the guy he drove got arrested for assault and possession of cocaine like 6 months later. I used to know a chauffeur. He ended up driving around some big stars. He was big dude, like 6 feet 8 inches and super muscular. His best story was when he was driving around a few WWF back then stars, and they awkwardly asked him to not get out and open the door for them because he'd make them look smaller. Friend of mine worked for an upscale concierge chauffeur service. His most memorable moment came when he lost Marie Osmond. Fairly simple gig. Go to airport and pick up matey Osmond, who was to be the featured entertainer at a private event. Plane comes in. He meets her. She has carry-on bag but her checked suitcase, containing her stage dresses and makeup, is missing. She is unflappable, though, asks to be taken to the nearest upscale mall. He does as instructed. She goes into a large upscale department store, selects 2 long sequined cocktail dresses and goes to the fitting room to try them on. Without him, of course. Unfortunately, there are 2 entrances and exits to the fitting room, and Marie Osmond exits out through the other side and cannot find my chauffeur buddy, who is waiting patiently on the side she'd entered. 20 minutes passes. He thinks something has gone wrong, so he grabs a female manager and asks her to go into the fitting rooms and ask for Marie Osmond. The manager thinks she is being pranked and declines. Chauffeur buddy is in mini panic mode now, running wildly around the store asking random customers, "Have you seen Marie Osmond? Have you seen Marie Osmond?" Store security is summoned and he is asked to leave the premises right now. He calls his employer and tells them he has lost Marie Osmond. The employer doesn't have her cell phone number but has her agent's number and he is not accepting calls. She has in the meantime taken a cab to the gig, thinking she has been forgotten. Lots of apologies eventually ensued and there were no repercussions. Buddy of mine ends up picking up a Netflix producer while doing Uber. He said they had a great conversation. As he brought him to his hotel, the producer invited him up for a drink, and since my friend was a film student, he thought it'd be a good idea to go and try to get some good networking in. They hung out for about an hour. When he asked my friend if he knew of any massage places with happy endings, he didn't, but the guy paid him $500 to bring him to the closest massage place, which was only a few miles out. Upon dropping him off, he gave my buddy a card and said, "There's a big party festival I'm hosting. That's your ticket in. I'll let you know. Then if I get that happy ending, haha." Quote, he got the happy ending. Not a conversation and not me. But definitely weird, shocking, and disgusting. A friend of mine who worked in music was in a limo with Robin Thicke and a load of dancers and models driving round London. They're all us chatting and whatnot. And out of nowhere, Robin Thicke just starts going down on one of the models. There was an awkward split-second silence. And then everyone just carried on and ignored it. I used to drive limousine and taxi. One time I got the manager of a fairly famous Canadian band in my car, asking me where to buy coke. I had no idea where and I told him that. So his bright idea was to find a prostitute, hire her and ask her. I told him I couldn't help him pick up prostitutes either. He was disappointed, but understood. He had me drive down a well-known street until he saw a prostitute. He asked me to pull over, got out of the taxi, paid the fare, and then immediately flagged me down again as a new ride. I knew what was up, but whatever. He gets back into the car with the prostitute and she tells him exactly what house to go to for some coke. I take them there and wait a bit. They come back out and I drive him back to the venue. Then he offers me 2 free tickets to the show, which I gladly accepted as love that band and had seen them 3 times. Alas, since I was still working during the show, I gave them away to 2 friends who had never seen the band. They had a good time and I had a fun story to share with them about how I scored those tickets. Not really a shocking conversation and hardly a famous person, but it was interesting how easily and full of trust people can be about searching out and buying drugs in a strange city. For the record, this was 2003. My dad was a chauffeur when I was younger and he told me of one story driving the director of a company down the road with the Blackpool Narrations in the company limousine. The director was standing up out of the sunroof with his arms out waving at people as he drove past. What the people on the street didn't know is that in the back of the limo there were 2 prostitutes blowing HITN.